My name is Olivia Parker, and I was 27 years old when I learned that the people closest to me were all keeping the same secret, just for different reasons. Up until then, my life had felt steady, not flashy, not dramatic, just good. I had a job I didn't hate, friends who knew my bad habits and loved me anyway, and a boyfriend who, on paper, checked every box. Ethan Cole. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, the kind with mismatched chairs, cheap wine, and conversations that drifted until midnight without anyone noticing the time. Ethan wasn't loud or performative. He listened, asked thoughtful questions, remembered things I mentioned in passing weeks later. When he smiled, it felt like he was choosing to be there. That's what drew me in. Our relationship unfolded naturally. No fireworks, no chaos, just a quiet confidence that felt mature. He supported my work, showed up when he said he would, never made me feel small for having doubts or fears. Looking back now, that's what scares me most. Because when something feels that safe, you stop looking for cracks. Ethan had an ex-girlfriend named Fiona Blake. She came up occasionally, never bitterly, never with drama, just neutrally. She and I weren't right for each other, he'd say. Or, it ended a while ago, clean break. I didn't push. Why would I? I wasn't threatened by a ghost. After 6 months together, I decided it was time to bring Ethan home to meet my parents. They lived in the same small town I grew up in, the kind of place where everyone knows your childhood nickname and pretends not to remember your worst phases. My parents had always been warm, open, almost aggressively welcoming. They ran a successful local business and prided themselves on being good people. I'd brought partners home before. It was always easy. So when I told them about Ethan during one of our weekly calls, my mom sounded genuinely excited. She asked what he liked to eat. My dad joked about firing up the grill. Normal, comfortable, familiar. We flew out on a Friday afternoon and checked into a hotel nearby. Ethan seemed relaxed, even cheerful. If he was nervous, he hid it well. I remember squeezing his hand in the car as we pulled up to my parents' house. "They're going to love you," I said. He smiled. "I hope so." The front door opened, and everything shifted. My parents' smiles froze mid-expression, like someone had paused a video at the wrong moment. My mother's hand tightened on the door frame. My father blinked, once, slowly. It wasn't subtle. And then my mom looked at Ethan and said, a little too carefully, "Welcome." Dinner was wrong. Not openly hostile, not confrontational, just strained in a way I'd never experienced in that house before. My mom asked questions but didn't wait for answers. My dad watched Ethan like he was trying to remember where he'd seen him before. At one point, my father casually asked, "So, have you lived around here long?" "No," Ethan said. "I moved a few years ago." "Oh," my mom said. "From where?" Ethan named a city. My mom nodded slowly, too slowly. Then she asked, "And before that?" Ethan hesitated, just a beat, before answering. I noticed. I filed it away. Halfway through dinner, my mom glanced at me and said, "You never mentioned your name sounded familiar." "My name?" Ethan asked. "No," she said. "Your past." The table went quiet. I laughed awkwardly. "Mom, what does that even mean?" She waved it off. "Nothing, I'm just tired." Later, as we were clearing plates, my mom asked Ethan, almost casually, "Have you ever dated anyone from this town?" Ethan's fork paused midair. "No," he said. "Not that I know of." I felt a prickle crawl up my spine. On the drive back to the hotel, Ethan was unusually quiet. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just a long day." That night, lying beside him in the dark, I couldn't sleep. My parents' faces kept replaying in my mind. That frozen moment at the door, the way my mom's voice had changed when she asked certain questions. And then, out of nowhere, my mom's earlier comment echoed back to me. "Your past sounds familiar." The next morning, over coffee, my mom finally said it. "So, Ethan," she began, not looking at him, "does the name Fiona Blake mean anything to you?" The air dropped out of the room. Ethan's cup rattled slightly as he set it down. "Yes," he said carefully. "She's my ex-girlfriend." My mother went pale. My father stood up so abruptly, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. And in that moment, before anyone said another word, I knew something had followed us into that house. Something none of them wanted to name. My father didn't sit back down right away. He stood near the sink like he needed something solid to hold on to, one hand braced on the countertop, the other flexing and unclenching like he was trying to shake off a memory. My mom kept her eyes on her coffee, stirring it even though it didn't need stirring. Ethan looked between them, then at me, his face tight, unreadable. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing the words out calmly, even as my chest started to tighten. Why are you both acting like you've seen a ghost? My mom swallowed. It's nothing, Olivia. It's not nothing. I heard my own voice sharpen. You said her name like it was poison. Ethan's jaw ticked. Maybe we should go, he said softly. Too softly, like he was trying not to set off something fragile. My dad finally spoke, his voice rough. How long did you date her? Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. A year. My father let out a small sound that didn't quite qualify as a laugh. More like disbelief. A year, he repeated, like he was tasting the words and finding them bitter. Dad, I said, why are you interrogating him? My mom's spoon clinked against the mug. Her hands were shaking. She tried to hide it by folding them in her lap. My father stared at Ethan for one long second, then looked away. Forget it, he said. It's not important. Ethan shifted, uncomfortable. I don't know what you think you know, he began. But if this is about Fiona, I haven't spoken to her in months. My mom's head snapped up at that. Months, she repeated too quickly. Ethan blinked. Yeah, she reached out a while ago, but I didn't... He stopped. That pause was loud. I felt it like a hand closing around my throat. She reached out? I asked. Why didn't you tell me that? Ethan's eyes flickered to mine. Because it didn't matter. My dad muttered, it always matters with people like her. Silence. I stared at my father. People like her? My mother stood abruptly. I need to check something in the back, she said, and walked out of the kitchen like she was escaping a fire. I looked at Ethan. He looked at the door my mom had disappeared through. And then my father did something I'd never seen him do. He lowered his voice like there were walls listening. Olivia, he said quietly, don't get too serious with him too fast. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? He shook his head. Just be careful. I felt the heat rush up my neck. You don't get to say that. You've met him for less than 24 hours. I'm your father. And I'm an adult, I snapped. Ethan stood up. Olivia, he said gently, reaching toward me like he was trying to calm an animal that had started to panic. Let's just go. We'll talk later. But later wasn't coming. Not the kind I needed. On the ride back to the hotel, Ethan kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting on his thigh, knuckles white. I watched him in the side mirror. Tell me the truth. I am, he said. No, you're giving me the version that keeps the peace. He exhaled through his nose. What do you want me to say? Fiona and I broke up. She's not part of my life. She reached out, I reminded him, my voice low. You said that a while ago. What does that mean? Ethan's gaze stayed on the road. A few months. And what did she want? His mouth tightened. She said she missed me, that she'd been thinking about what we had. And I told her it was over. I waited. That's it? Yes. But my instincts, my quiet, reliable instincts, were screaming. Because Ethan's answers sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced them in a mirror. Back at the hotel, I tried calling my mom. No answer. I tried my dad. Straight to voicemail. An hour later, my mom texted. Sorry about earlier. We're just stressed. Everything is fine. Enjoy your day. Everything is fine. It was the kind of sentence people use when everything is absolutely not fine. That afternoon, Ethan suggested we go sightseeing, get lunch, walk around downtown like we were a normal couple visiting my hometown. He tried so hard to act normal that it felt like a performance. At lunch, he made jokes, asked me about my childhood, smiled at the waitress. But I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's hands shaking around her mug. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling while Ethan slept beside me, breathing slow and even like he didn't have a care in the world. Around 2 a.m., his phone buzzed. Once, then again. He didn't wake up. I did. The screen lit up, just bright enough for me to see the name. Fiona Blake. My heart slammed so hard it almost hurt. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't even touch it. I just sat there, frozen, watching the name fade as the screen dimmed back to black. In the morning, Ethan was already in the shower when I checked my own phone. 3 missed calls from my mother. 1 from my father. No voicemail. When Ethan came out, towel around his waist, hair damp, he looked too calm. I'm going to run down to the lobby for coffee, he said. Your phone rang last night, I said, watching his face. He didn't miss a beat. Spam. I didn't blink. It said Fiona Blake. His body went still. Just for a second. Then he forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. She must have called by accident. By accident, I repeated softly, like I was testing whether the words made sense. Ethan's expression tightened. Olivia, I told you, it's over. She's not relevant. Not relevant. But my parents had reacted to her name like it was a landmine. Ethan was lying too smoothly. And now Fiona was calling at 2 a.m. like she had every right to. We went to my parents' house again that afternoon. My mom hugged me too tightly, like she was trying to absorb me back into her body. My dad avoided Ethan's eyes completely. Dinner was worse than the first night. more brittle, more quiet, like everyone was walking on thin ice and pretending they weren't. At one point, my mom asked Ethan about his job. He answered politely, but I barely heard him. Because I saw something. My father's phone buzzed under the table. He glanced down. His face changed. Then he slid the phone into his pocket like he'd been caught with something illegal. I watched him, my chest tightening. Later, when Ethan went to the bathroom, I followed my mom into the kitchen. "Mom," I whispered urgently, "what is happening?" She didn't look at me. She opened the fridge, stared into it like the answers might be behind the milk. "Nothing," she said. I grabbed her wrist gently. "Stop, you're scaring me." Her eyes finally met mine, and they were wet. "Olivia," she said, voice cracking, "I need you to trust me." My breath caught. "Trust you about what?" She squeezed my hand, hard. "Just don't make this worse," she whispered. I pulled back, confused and furious. "I don't even know what this is." She shook her head, tears slipping free now. "I'm trying to protect you." "From what? From Ethan? From Fiona? From them?" My dad appeared in his doorway, face tight. "Enough," he said sharply, like he was afraid of what my mom might accidentally reveal. My mother wiped her cheeks fast, forcing a smile that looked like it hurt. "Dessert?" she offered too brightly. I turned, my skin buzzing with anger and fear. Ethan came back and wrapped an arm around my waist, like he owned the right to steady me. "Everything okay?" he asked. I stared at him, at how easily he slipped into the role of supportive boyfriend, at how his eyes flicked just once to my father's face. And in that tiny exchange, I saw something unspoken pass between them. Recognition, a shared understanding, a silent agreement. I realized then that I wasn't the only one missing pieces. I was the only one not holding the full picture. That night, when we got back to the hotel, I didn't ask anymore. I didn't argue. I didn't demand. I just waited, because whatever secret they were protecting was starting to circle closer. And I had the sick feeling that soon, I wouldn't get to choose how I learned it. The night after that second dinner, I didn't sleep at all. I lay beside Ethan, my back turned to him, counting the seconds between his breaths. They were slow, steady, peaceful. Mine weren't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's tears, my father's clenched jaw, the way Ethan's phone lit up with Fiona Blake like it had every right to intrude into my life. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't scared anymore. I was focused. On the flight home, Ethan tried to hold my hand. I let him. But it felt like holding onto a stranger. Every small gesture, his thumb brushing my knuckles, his knee leaning into mine, felt rehearsed, like he was performing boyfriend while watching the exits. As soon as we landed, he said he needed to go straight home. "Work stuff," he explained. I nodded, didn't argue. That alone should have told him I was done believing the easy version of things. The first thing I did when I got back to my apartment was call my mom. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I tried my dad. Same thing. That's when the quiet panic set in, the kind that crawls under your skin and refuses to leave. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I typed Fiona Blake into the search bar. At first, it was nothing. A private Instagram, sparse LinkedIn profile, a few tagged photos that didn't tell me much. Then I scrolled, and scrolled. 5 years ago. 6. There it was. A photo taken at an upscale restaurant, white tablecloths, soft lighting, wine glasses catching the glow. Fiona was sitting close to a man. Too close. My breath stopped when I recognized the side of his face, the slope of his nose, the watch I'd given him for his 50th birthday. My father. I stared at the screen so long my eyes started to burn. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I clicked the photo. The caption read, "Some connections are worth keeping private." My hands were shaking so badly I had to close the laptop. I paced my apartment like a trapped animal, replaying everything in my head. My dad's reaction, my mom's tears, Ethan's silence. This wasn't coincidence. This was history, buried, hidden, rotting. I needed facts, real ones, not half-truths and whispered warnings. So I did the unthinkable. I hired a private investigator. When I explained the situation over the phone, I felt ridiculous, like I was starring in someone else's nightmare. "I just need to know who she is," I said, "and how she fits into my family." The investigator didn't laugh, didn't question me. That scared me more than anything. While I waited, I kept digging. 3 nights later, I found another photo. This one was older, grainier. Fiona again, leaning against someone outside a hotel. This time it wasn't my father. It was my mother. They looked intimate, too close to be accidental, too familiar to be nothing. I felt sick. My parents, who'd been married for over 30 years, had both been involved with the same woman. Separately, secretly. I sat on the floor of my living room, back against the couch, staring at the photos like they might rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Ethan, we need to talk. I didn't respond. Another buzz. Ethan, please don't do this in your head alone. I turned the phone face down. 2 days later, the investigator called. Are you somewhere private? He asked. Yes, I said, my voice barely steady. There's a pattern, he said carefully, and you're not going to like it. I gripped the edge of the table. Just tell me. Over the past 6 years, Fiona Blake had been involved in multiple relationships with older, financially stable individuals. Business owners, executives, married, single, male, female. The relationships followed the same arc. Intense emotional bonding, fast intimacy, private secrecy. Then money, loans, gifts, temporary help, and then disappearance. 2 of those names stood out immediately. My father and my mother. I felt like the room was tilting. She met your father through a dating app 5 years ago, the investigator continued. They were involved for several months. He gave her a substantial amount of money before confronting her about seeing other people. And my mother? I asked, though I already knew. 3 years ago, business conference, short relationship, same ending. Neither of them had known about the other. Until me. Until Ethan. Until Fiona walked back into their lives wearing my boyfriend's past like a disguise. I hung up and sat there in silence. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was cold. Every strange moment suddenly made sense. The dinner tension, the warnings, the secret meetings. They hadn't been protecting me from Ethan. They'd been protecting themselves from the truth. My phone buzzed again. A call this time. Mom, I answered. Olivia, she said immediately, her voice breaking. Please, before you hear it from someone else. I already know, I said. Silence. How? She whispered. I know about Fiona, I said flatly. About you, about Dad. A quiet sob escaped her. We were ashamed, she said. We didn't know how to tell you. You should have told me the moment you recognized her, I said, my voice shaking now despite myself. We didn't want to hurt you. You let me fall in love with someone connected to her, I snapped. You let me sleep next to a man who brought her back into our lives. She came back on her own, my mother said quickly. When she realized who you were, who we were, she reached out again. The words landed like ice. So you did meet her, I said, after the dinner. Yes, she whispered. I closed my eyes. The picture was complete now. Fiona wasn't haunting my life by accident. She'd found her way back in on purpose. And I, Olivia Parker, was the final thread tying her unfinished past together. I ended the call without saying goodbye. That night, I drove to my parents' house. I brought the photos, the report, the truth. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going there as their daughter. I was going there as someone who refused to be lied to anymore. The porch light was on when I pulled into my parents' driveway. It was the same soft yellow glow I'd come home to my entire childhood, after late nights with friends, after college breaks, after moves that never really felt permanent. That light used to mean safety. Now it felt like a spotlight. I sat in my car for a full minute, hands resting on the steering wheel, forcing my breathing to slow. Then I grabbed the folder from the passenger seat. The investigator's report, printed photos, bank statements clipped together like evidence in a trial, and walked up to the front door. My mother opened it before I knocked. She looked like she'd been waiting. Her eyes were swollen. Her shoulders slumped, like the weight of the truth had finally settled in. Olivia, she whispered. I didn't hug her. I walked past her and laid everything out on the dining table, one by one. The restaurant photo of Fiona with my father. The hotel photo of Fiona with my mother. The timeline. The money. My father came in from the living room and froze. He didn't deny it. That was the worst part. My mom covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. My dad sank into a chair like his legs had given out. How long were you going to let this go on? I asked quietly. My father stared at the table. We thought it was over, years ago. And when you recognized her? I pressed. He looked up then, his eyes red. I panicked. We both did, my mom said. Seeing her again, with your boyfriend, it felt unreal. So you lied, I said, every single day. We were trying to figure out what she wanted, my mom said desperately. She said she'd changed, that she never meant to hurt anyone. I laughed once, sharply. And you believed her? My dad finally looked ashamed. We believed what we needed to believe. I nodded slowly. That's the problem. Silence fell heavy between us. Then my father spoke again, softer. She asked about you. My stomach twisted. When? The second meeting, he admitted. She wanted to know how serious you and Ethan were. My nails dug into my palms. And you didn't warn me. We were afraid, my mom whispered. Afraid you wouldn't trust us. Afraid you'd choose him over us. I looked at her then, really looked at her. You took that choice away from me. I left before either of them could stop me. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream. I drove straight to Ethan's apartment. He opened the door like he already knew why I was there. Olivia, he said, running a hand through his hair. Please. I walked past him and set the folder on his kitchen counter. Tell me what she wants, I said. He closed the door slowly behind me. She showed up 2 months ago, he admitted. Said she'd run into your parents by accident. Said it felt like fate. I stared at him. And you believe that? No, he said quietly, but I believe she was dangerous. So you kept her secret, I said, from me. She said she'd tell you herself if I didn't help her understand your family dynamic. The words landed like a slap. You helped her? I said. I thought I could control it, he said, that I could keep you out of it. I shook my head slowly. You don't protect someone by lying to them. She wasn't after you, he insisted. She was after closure. I laughed again, hollow this time. Closure doesn't involve money trails and private investigators. Ethan looked broken now. I love you. I believed he thought he did. But love without honesty is just another manipulation. I don't know who you are anymore, I said, and I can't unlearn what I know. He stepped toward me. I stepped back. That's it, I said. I'm done. Later that night, Fiona finally tried to contact me directly. A voicemail. Her voice was calm, warm, almost affectionate. Olivia, she said, like she had any right to say my name. I know things look complicated. I just want you to hear my side. I deleted it without listening to the rest, because I already knew her story. She didn't love people. She collected them. And I had been the last piece she needed to prove she still had power. The next morning, I packed a suitcase. Not to punish anyone. Not to run, but to breathe. Some secrets don't explode. They rot. And I wasn't going to let myself decay with them. I left town before the sun came up. No dramatic goodbye, no confrontation at the door. Just my car packed with the things that mattered, and the quiet hum of the highway stretching out in front of me like a clean line I could finally follow. I didn't tell my parents where I was going. I didn't tell Ethan. I needed something that belonged only to me. For the first few weeks, I stayed somewhere temporary, an unfamiliar city where no one knew my history, my last name, or the version of me that had trusted too easily. I went to work during the day, came home at night, and let the silence settle around me. It was uncomfortable at first. Silence always is when you're used to noise disguised as love. Ethan tried to reach me. Emails. Long messages filled with apologies and explanations that arrived too late to matter. He said he was scared of losing me, that he thought he was protecting me, that Fiona had manipulated him too. Maybe that was true, but intent doesn't erase impact. I sent one reply. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked him. My parents reached out less often, but when they did, it was heavy with guilt and careful wording. They wanted forgiveness without understanding what forgiveness would cost me. I wasn't ready. I still don't know if I ever will be. 6 months passed. I found a new apartment, painted the walls a color I'd never dared to choose before, built routines that didn't revolve around anyone else's expectations. I started dating again, slowly, cautiously, with clearer boundaries and a sharper sense of myself. Sometimes I'd hear things through mutual friends. Fiona had moved on. New city, new circle, new story. Part of me wanted to warn the next person she attached herself to, but I didn't, because I'd learned something important. People don't listen until they're ready to see, and I was finally ready to see myself. I still think about that first dinner sometimes, the way my parents' smiles froze, the way Ethan's phone lit up in the dark, the way my instincts whispered before they screamed. I used to blame myself for missing the red flags. Now I understand that love doesn't make you stupid. It makes you hopeful, and hope is only dangerous when it's paired with silence. I didn't get closure. No neat ending. No final confrontation that tied everything up in a bow. But I got something better. I got my life back. I learned that walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you chose not to stay in a story that was never written with your best interests in mind. My name is Olivia Parker, and for the first time in a long time, the story I'm living actually feels like mine.